Welcome back, all you horror maniacs. That's right, I'm back with another Nightmare on Elm Street soundtrack review from the Nightmare on Elm Street box set collection of soundtracks. Produced by Varese Sarabande. I finally got the name right. It only took me looking it up. Like, I couldn't have done that previously. Well, I've been chopping up that name for the company for so long, I got used to saying it wrong. So I finally decided to actually look it up so I can actually get the name right, and it's Varese Sarabande. I bought a movie score from them a long time ago, and just the way I thought it was pronounced when I was younger, it kind of always stuck with me, and I never thought to actually just go and look it up and find out how you actually say Varese Sarabande. So I always ended up chopping it up, not meaning to, but oh well. So the soundtrack that we're reviewing today will be this. No, it's actually A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. Music composed and performed by Christopher Young. Now, if you don't know who Christopher Young is, you're probably not alone. Actually, Christopher Young is not only known for making this soundtrack, but he also made the soundtrack eventually to Hellraiser. Obviously, Varese Sarabande has had this soundtrack out for quite some time now. There was an album made of it, there was a cassette made of it, eventually it went to CD, and one of the last CDs, which is what I had, was they did a combination of Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2 on the same CD. So the first 13 tracks on here are from that original soundtrack recording that has been out. So like my review for Nightmare on Elm Street 1, obviously I can't play any of the music because of copyright laws, so I'm going to go through some of the tracks from the original soundtrack recording and kind of talk about each one of these tracks and explain them to you so that you know, at least know where it pertains to the film. And you can always go back and, of course, watch the movie and hear the music and take particular note to the music, or obviously you can go and buy the box set and listen to the music all by yourselves. So but I'm going to go through some of the tracks on here from the original recording, and then I'm going to get to the main part of this. And the whole reason I got this box set was because there's tons upon tons of bonus unreleased material in here that is really, really cool. So here we go. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. So obviously the very first track on here is called the main title, and this is obviously once again the main song that you hear at the very beginning of the film. And when you see the titles come up and say Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. And you also see the school bus coming down the street, which is being driven by Robert Englund and is carrying Mark Patton, or Jesse Walsh. Now, when New Line Cinema was making these films, they had very small budgets and not a lot of time to actually make the movie. So they had to do everything pretty quickly. Now, the thing about Christopher Young, he actually submitted some music for Nightmare on Elm Street 1 for the first film, and he was turned down. They were like, no, we don't really want that. And they went with Charles Bernstein. And Charles Bernstein, of course, created the iconic Freddy or Nightmare theme. The actual theme that you hear throughout that movie is that doo 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 doo. You hear that all the way through. You don't hear it from me, but I mean, you hear it, Charles Bernstein's theme all the way through that soundtrack. Well, when Christopher Young was actually accepted to do Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he decided not to do anything that Charles Bernstein did, and he omitted that whole theme. So you don't actually hear that throughout any of this. Instead, what you get in this soundtrack is a lot of horror music, and it is creepy, it's scary, it's nightmarish, but there's no theme to it, and there's no... It's almost like it's consistently the same stuff kind of played over and over, but it's not... It's like remixes of, like one track will be a remix of the next, almost. I mean, he does do some different things and play around with it, but there's no actual theme. Like, it's almost like there's no foundation to it, almost. But this first track, the main title, is, I guess, what would be the theme of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and the way it starts out. And it's spooky, it's scary, it's creepy, and you see the school bus coming down the street, and it's Robert Englund's driving, and Jesse Walsh is in the back, and there's a bunch of teenagers, and then they're letting the teens off the bus and everything, and then all of a sudden the bus starts driving erratically, and you find out that Freddy has actually taken over the bus. So of course the music becomes a little more erratic, as well as the bus is going and speeding up and driving over mounds and everything, because it's driving out into the desert. So it is actually a cool main title, and it's a good way to start the film, because it's one of the few times in the movie that you don't know who's dreaming. But the way the movie starts out, and with this music, it kind of puts you in that nightmare, that dreamscape, and you don't know it yet. And that's what's really cool about this main title. You don't know that it's happening. So I like the main title. It's all right. It's not a bad track. But I just kind of wish he would have actually put the Nightmare on Elm Street theme in somewhere, somewhere throughout this actual soundtrack, which he doesn't do. So track number 2 on here is called "And Leave the Driving to Us," which is obviously a play on the old Greyhound commercials. So in this portion of the movie score, this is actually when Freddy has driven the bus out to the desert, and now you do realize there's a dream happening, because the ground starts to collapse and all the rock falls away, and the bus is teetering on these 2 spires of piles of rock. Then one of the piles falls away. Now this is something I never understood in the movie. Is one of the piles actually falls away. The pile that's holding up the front of the bus falls away. So the pile that's holding up the back of the bus is all that's left for the bus to teeter on. So when Freddy Krueger actually stands up, it seems like the bus would fall forward and just fall into the canyon below, the fiery rocks below. But it don't. He actually makes it, he rocks it back and forth when he first stands up. And then, of course, he walks down toward the back of the bus, where Jesse and the 2 girls that are left on the bus are screaming, and Jesse's pounding on the window trying to get out. And again, this is a really good track. It's really cool. It sounds great. There's not really a connection to Freddy in it. I'm going to skip a track here to track number 4. It's called "Kissing Freddy on the Catwalk," and this is actually the music that's played while Freddy is dying. Lisa has, kissed Freddy at this point, and Freddy's dying because of her love for Jesse, and Jesse is starting to finally get released from his being entombed in Freddy's body. Next we have track number 5, which is called "Chestburster," and this is, of course, when Freddy comes through Jesse and kills Grady. And this is the whole music that plays during that transformation, where you actually see Freddy's, when Jesse screams, you see Freddy's eyeball in the back of his throat, and then you see Freddy's head burst through Jesse's chest, and he splits himself open and crawls out of Jesse's body. It's very cool soundtrack. I like the music during that scene, which throughout this soundtrack, I mean, I like the music in the soundtrack. It's a good soundtrack, but again, there's not really anything that you sit here and go, okay, well, if you hadn't read the title of the track, you wouldn't know that music goes to that scene. I guess that's one of the biggest problems with this entire soundtrack, is that it's like, because one song sounds exactly like, almost like the other, just remixed a little bit, tweaked here and there, added a few different sounds. That's really all it is. But the basic underlining sound sounds like the last track before it, so it's hard to pick it out unless you sit here and go, okay, well, this is Chestburster. Track number 6 is called Jump Rope, and this is where Jesse goes to his little sister's room, and she's jumping rope and singing the Freddy Jump Rope song, you know, doing the whole 1, 2, Freddy's coming for. So, and she's doing that, which was a really nightmarish part in the movie. I really actually liked that scene a lot. I thought that was really cool. But it's one of the times that he goes to his sister's room, just sees her just jump roping, and the jump rope song is actually in the track. Okay, so now before I get to the main part of these tracks, the new stuff, the bonus material, the unreleased stuff, before I get to that, I want to mention something here that I also read in the liner notes in the booklet that comes with this set. They were naming off the instruments that were being used by the orchestra. He had a 45-piece orchestra to actually do this, which was surprising considering the money that they had to do the film. But he was able to get a 45-piece orchestra to do this, and they're talking about the woodwinds that they used, and the horns and the different instruments that, you know, everybody was using. And then while they're naming these instruments in this liner note, they also mention the fact that he added a sound to this that, until to this day, I always wondered, what is that sound? And I know I've heard it, and it sounds like something which, in reading the liner note, I found out that's exactly what it was. He added whale song to some of these tracks. So, especially like when the kiss on the catwalk. So when Lisa goes to save Jesse from Freddy, you hear whales. You hear especially when you're hearing just the soundtrack, you really hear it. You hear this whoo, whoo, and I'm sitting here thinking all this time, I'm like, it sounds like Star Trek 4. Why does it sound like Star Trek 4? And I always wondered that. Why is that actually whales that I'm hearing in it? Sure enough, that's exactly what it was. It's whale song. For some reason, Christopher Young put whale song in this thing. I don't know why. Maybe he found it really creepy. But I have to say this, at least it does kind of go with the music, I suppose. But why it's actually there, who knows? Okay, so starting with track 14, called The Horror in My Head. This is the track, it's only 1 minute and 29 seconds long, and what it is this is where he's chasing Lisa around the house, and you do kind of hear Freddy's blades in it, or like they're swiping, like, you know. You can kind of see that portion of the film when you hear this music, but by reading the title of it, The Horror in My Head, I actually, before I ever listened to it, I thought it was the scene where Freddy takes off his hat and pulls back his skull and you see his brain. That's what I thought it was going to be, but it's not. It's where he's actually chasing Lisa around the house. Next is called Wake Up, and this is where Jesse wakes up and he looks around his room and things are melting. It's so hot in his room. He's been complaining about how hot it is in his room, and because it's like an oven in there, you know, it's the boiler. So he sees the record melting, his candle has melted, his hat is melting, his baseball hat, everything's melting in his room. So track 16 is called My Sick Toaster. Now, again, this track sounds so much similar to all the other tracks, so it's really kind of hard to pick out where this actually is, because I don't necessarily remember this music even being around the part where the toaster blew up in the movie. But it's quite possible, because he made a whole track to it. Track 17 is called Any Dream Will Do, and it's only 39 seconds long. And it's basically just kind of, again, this is one of those where you just kind of hear the ching, ching, you know, you hear these stingers or whatever that you heard from Charles Bernstein, called them stingers on Nightmare 1's soundtrack. And that's what this is kind of. You just hear kind of this Freddy sharp stuff just going on, just boing, boing, and you hear these bells. There's like bells going through it too, like doo-doo-ding, doo-doo-ding, you know. So, not a bad track, not a bad song. It's just really short. Next is Daymare, and when I first listened to this, to me it sounded exactly like Any Dream Will Do at first, and then I started to listen to it again. I rewound it and listened to it again, and I finally picked out where it actually is. And what it is when Lisa takes Jesse to Freddy's boiler room during the day. They drive out to his boiler room, and she's trying to get Jesse to have maybe some psychic connection to Freddy Krueger, because she believes maybe there is some kind of psychic connection between the two of them somehow. And it's basically that when he's walking through the boiler room with, or what's supposed to be the boiler room, it looks like a train station or something. Or some kind of metal factory of some sort. But he's walking through there with Lisa, and then they see this like locker, and he opens the locker and there's a rat inside the locker, and that's where this song happens. Track 19 is called Splash Dead, and it's all of 26 seconds long. And this is basically where Freddy jumps out of the ground at the pool party. This is the pool party. This is when it starts to fry or boil inside the pool. Track number 20 is called Witch Witness, and it's 1 minute and 39 seconds long. And this is the track, this is the music that plays while Freddy has rounded up all the teenagers at the pool party, and he's been running back and forth, slashing teenagers and pushing them all up against the fence. And the one teenager that decides to walk out to Freddy and say, "I can help you, man. You don't have to do this. I can help you, man. I'll help you." And of course he gives that great line. Freddy gives that great line of, "Help yourself, fucker." So that's this music. Track number 21 is called Not Again. And once again, I could not tell you where this is actually played. Again, this is one of those tracks that it sounds so much similar to all the rest of them that I couldn't actually figure out where this goes in the movie. Number 22, Wrong Turn Right. And once again, it's another track that, once again, I can't tell you where it is in the movie. But I know it sounds familiar. All of it sounds familiar to me because I've watched the movie so many times. Track number 23 is called Head on Fire. Track number 24 is called Feet on Fire. Now these two tracks sound almost exactly alike. And the only thing I can make out between these two tracks is these are two of the times that Jesse wakes up from his nightmares. This is where Head on Fire, I believe, is where he wakes up and finally goes downstairs and he's carrying the two boxes out. And his dad says, oh, there's two more boxes. So he's finally getting two more boxes out of his room. I believe this is from the first nightmare where he first wakes up. And then Feet on Fire is like one of the dreams later. Where he wakes up in his room and it's all hot and he's sweating and he can't sleep. Okay, track number 25 through 28 are each called Sting Thing. Okay? Sting Thing. And they're all of 20 seconds long. Each one is like 20 seconds long. Sting Thing number 1 is track number 5 and it's 20 seconds long. Sting Thing number 2 is 28 seconds long. Sting Thing number 3 is 22 seconds long. Sting Thing number 4 is 18 seconds long. Now, what all of these are basically, it's where Freddy jumps out of things. Like all of a sudden you hear him, you know, sort of like the stingers that were on the first soundtrack. This is Freddy again jumping out of places, you know, or suddenly appearing. Boom! You know, you hear this ching, bling, you know, that kind of thing. All of a sudden he's there. You know, it's Freddy, and all of a sudden he appears. It's that kind of stuff. Or all of a sudden he uses his blade and cuts into something or stabs somebody, and that's where all of that comes into. Track number 29 is called Hell's Bells, and it's all of 12 seconds long, and it literally is just the bells. Just these nightmarish bells. That's it. Just ding ding, ding ding, ding. That's the whole track. So the very last track on this soundtrack is track number 30, and it is Nightmare on Elm Street Suite, Sweet Dreams. It's 15 minutes and 49 seconds long. It's in stereo, and because some of the tracks on here are actually, on these unreleased tracks, are mono, and I didn't know that. Some of them are mono, some of them are stereo. And they kind of jump back and forth between it. But track number 30 happens to be in stereo and is called Sweet Dreams. And this is basically an overture of the whole soundtrack. So if you think that, like I think, all these tracks sound exactly alike, this proves it. It's nice to hear, it's cool, it's good music, and I would say that about this entire soundtrack. It is good music. It is nice sounding, nightmarish, scary, creepy music. Is it Nightmare on Elm Street? Not. And that's kind of the problem. It has the same problem. This soundtrack has the same problem that the movie does. It's not quite as good as the first film, and the music's not quite as good as the first film either. It's good music, it's just not really Nightmare on Elm Street. And that's kind of the movie itself is that way. It's not really Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay, so last thing, obviously this is not the poster for Nightmare on Elm Street. This is part of the picture of the booklet that comes with the box set. Because as I showed on the unboxing, you put all these album covers together and they make that one picture that's on the inlet or the booklet that comes with the box set. On the back, of course, it names the movie and all the tracks, and then it has the movie poster up top. That's the only part on the cover that has the movie poster. But if you look right here, you can see this or not, that is the movie poster printed on the CD itself, which is really cool. So you do, here's the bird that explodes right up here. The exploding bird is up there. Freddy's blades are down here going across what's supposed to be Lisa's back. Jesse's up here, and Freddy's eyeball is right next to him. So it's the movie poster. It's the same poster that's actually right there on the back. And I know it's really small, so it's right there on the back of the album cover. Very cool. I like the way they did this. This is packaged really well. So overall, I enjoyed this soundtrack. It's a good soundtrack. Is it Nightmare on Elm Street? Not really, but it is a great soundtrack. I really did enjoy it, and I can't wait to get to Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, which is going to be the next soundtrack, of course. Now, I'm trying to get through all these, and of course we're doing Horror Month, and I'm watching videos and editing videos just like this one. So I'm trying to get all through these soundtracks and be able to listen to each one of them so that I can come and review these for you. But bear with me. I'm trying to get to them. I actually wanted to try to do the soundtrack after we did the review, but that's not going to happen. So I'm going to do these as fast as I can to get them out to you guys so you can hear me talk about this great freaking great box set. This awesome great box set that I have my glove wrapped around here with the sweaty Fredder with the sweaty Fredder around it. So to hear the next review of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the soundtrack, of course you've got to hit that subscribe button down there for me. Please do that. Subscribe to us. We love our Maniacs. We need more Maniacs. We always need more Maniacs here at Box Office Maniacs, where we do Horror Month 2018 and 2019 and 2000, where we do Horror Month every freaking October. Every October is Horror Month, and that's what we're doing. 31 straight days of horror-related everything. Soundtracks, figures, movies, books, you name it. It's Halloween, it's Horror Month, it's fun, and you need to join us. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep.